One of the most infamous rules of the modern Jedi Order is their view against attachments. This one ruling has ironically both rescued many Jedi from the dark side and also driven an equal amount to it. The most important case is of course Anakin Skywalker. Once upon a time in the Order's history though, Jedi were freely allowed to marry and have children. There was even a period of time when Jedi dynasties were a widespread commonality. But when the Jedi Council ultimately ruled against Jedi having families, their families faded away, but they did not go entirely extinct. Greetings, acolytes and lore junkies, and welcome to the archives. In today's holocron, we did some real digging to find as many Jedi as possible who broke this rule. However, we didn't just want to catalog any Jedi that had an infatuation or an attachment. No, we wanted to find the ones that went all the way and sired entire families during this period of time when it was strictly forbidden. So that would basically be from the point of the new Sith Wars in 3996 BBY until the events of Order 66. If only Anakin had known about all of these, he may have not made so many desperate choices. So let's jump ahead and explore the Jedi families. Starting off, we're going to establish the Jedi families that were actually approved by the High Council. The ruling had been made to ensure that attachment would not lead to the dark side. Things like lover's jealousy or fear and grief over a loss or a spouse or a child are known to drive Jedi into the arms of darkness. That being said though, there were certain rare cases when the council would make an exception, and the two that we uncovered were Ki-Adi-Mundi and Revan. The case of Ki-Adi-Mundi is a textbook case of a requirement to break the rules. His species, known as the Sarians, had a disproportionate birth rate of males to females. It was something akin to one male for every 20 females of the species. Because of this, it was customary for the Sarian males to take several wives and sire as many children as possible. For Mundi, this was not about true love. This was about the survival of his race. As one of the few males, he had a duty to his people to follow this custom. The High Council was able to detect the nuance of this unique situation, and so the Jedi permitted Mundi to marry and have children. However, this came with a heavy stipulation. Obviously, his life as a Jedi would need to come first. He would retreat to Syria and visit his family whenever he pleased, but he was always on call as a Jedi when the council needed him. Second, and most importantly, he was not allowed to have any attachment to his family. The second part is one that Mundi struggled with greatly. Master Ki-Adi-Mundi had a staunch adherent to the Jedi way and was revered because of it, but he would later admit to Anakin that he felt torn apart by being both a family man and a Jedi Master. Prior to the outbreak of the Clone Wars, Mundi spent a great deal of time on his homeworld. When he wasn't saving the galaxy, he tended to the many needs of his family and was active in Syria's politics. Mundi had 4 wives and many daughters, all of whom he cared for deeply, and one of the struggles he had was his bond with his wife, Shea. The bond wife was essentially the first wife, and the one that is closest to the husband. And as for Ki-Adi-Mundi, he had sired children with all of his honor wives, but not Shea. The reason was because he deeply desired a son, and he had only daughters. Unlike the others, Shea was mildly Force-sensitive herself, and she could read Mundi like a book. He worried that if Shea were to give him another daughter, he wouldn't be able to hide his disappointment from her. But Mundi overcame this when he had to save one of his other daughters from a group of terrorists. The whole time he wrestled with the panic of his offspring being in danger, while also keeping himself rooted in serenity and detachment as a Jedi. In the process, he learned the value of appreciating the family that he had. After rescuing his daughter, he agreed to have a child with Shea, and although she indeed bore yet another girl, Mundi was nonetheless extremely pleased. However, as the Clone Wars broke out, Mundi's entire family would be wiped out in the Battle of Syria. This event is what usually gives Ki-Adi-Mundi a bad rap, because he doesn't seem to mourn any of his family members. We ourselves have criticized him heavily for this at the channel. However, as we learn from his conversations with Anakin, he indeed felt immense grief. But because he was a Jedi Master, he dealt with it the way that the Jedi did, which is to accept that death is a natural part of life's cycle, because he knew that all beings transformed into the cosmic force upon death. And so, Mundi released his attachments and gave it over to the Force. So when they were gone, he was at peace, knowing that they were a part of the very energy field that he drew upon every single day. So in truth, to Mundi, his family was always with him. The next marriage permitted by the council was Revan, and this admittance was one done very begrudgingly. Revan had already gone to the dark side, lost his memories, and come back to embracing the light. Then he regained his memories and still chose to remain as a Jedi. He had defeated Darth Malak and was able to use the love fostered between himself and Bastila Shan to bring her back from the brink of darkness herself. Revan was the only one who stood between the Republic and total annihilation by the Sith, and the High Council knew it. Because of this, the Council reluctantly allowed him to marry Bastila. Their love had not driven them to the dark side, but had done the opposite. It had saved them. This was a strange phenomenon that the Council may have tried to keep quiet, which may be why it isn't explicitly mentioned in many Jedi records, and the marriage of Revan and Bastila was kept a relative secret even among the High Council. Like with many things, Revan was used to showing the Council uncomfortable truths. Revan went on to form a doctrine that love and attachment could empower the light side within Jedi the same way that anger and hatred empowered those that used the dark. However, his teachings never went beyond a thought experiment. He was granted a seat on the Jedi High Council, but Revan was able to tell they only did so as a reward for his actions. In truth, he wasn't wanted there at all. The Council still harbored hard feelings towards him for his actions as Darth Revan. Still though, he was pleased with getting to live a married life and to keep his love. The two were able to get a nice apartment on Coruscant, somewhere nearby to the Jedi Temple, and there, they would sire a son, naming him Vanner Shan. Unfortunately though, Revan would never get to see the birth of his own son. He departed from Bastila in order to stop his mind from breaking, to pursue the thought in his mind that would not leave him alone. What was in the unknown regions that he had discovered and lost? And when he journeyed out there, he found Vitiate and the Sith Empire waiting, crouched like a waiting predator. Teaming up with Mitra Surik and Lord Scourge, the three attempted to challenge the Emperor, but the two Jedi were betrayed by Scourge, who foresaw that they would ultimately fail. Surik was killed, and Revan was imprisoned by Vitiate for 3 centuries. Vanner Shan would then grow up knowing his father only through stories told to him by his mother. Interestingly, despite being the child of 2 incredibly powerful Jedi, he was not Force sensitive, and so he never became a Jedi. However, his genes carried the Force's strength, which lay dormant for many generations, but not forever. The power of Revan's bloodline awoke during the Great Galactic War in Satele Shan, who happens to be the next Jedi on our list who had a family of her own. Although in her case, she had to be much more secretive, even more secretive than Anakin in many cases. Hers was not sanctioned by the High Council. Satele was an incredibly powerful and a skilled Jedi who trained under the remarkable Cal Sandarric. She and her master were the first to face the Sith threat when they arrived on Korriban in the year 3681 BBY. Satele survived the duel with Malgus, and went on to become the spearhead leader in the war effort. She would meet her husband 14 years later in the Battle of Alderaan, where Jace Malcolm was stationed on Alderaan to rehabilitate injured troopers and to get them back into combat. But when the Sith and Malgus arrived on Alderaan, this tiny squad of recovering soldiers were the only defense that the planet had. For several weeks, Havoc Squad led guerrilla raids on Malgus's forces, keeping them from fully taking over the world. This gave enough time for the Republic forces to break through and to lend aid. Satele Shan would arrive just in time to save Malcolm's life and repel Malgus's invasion. Following this, the two worked together closely, going on many missions and saving each other's lives several times over. In an entry in the Jedi archives, Satele would mention that she trusted Malcolm as much as she trusted any Jedi, and eventually, the two secretly confessed their feelings for one another and would get married. Behind closed doors, they would even have a child by the name of Theron Shan. Satele and Jace would continue to fight against the Sith Empire, but their relationship became strained following the sacking of Coruscant. Jace was eager to continue working with the Jedi, but that put him in a difficult position because the Jedi stopped being popular in the Republic. With the war raging on, Malcolm's hatred for the Sith grew and grew until he began acting ruthlessly out of revenge. Fearing the darkness she sensed growing within her love, Satele had a tense breakup with Malcolm. She worried he would go to the dark side in pursuit of protecting her and their child. In the process, she also gave up Theron Shan for adoption in the Jedi Order. And yet again, history repeated itself. Force sensitivity eluded Theron as well. Although he was trained as a Jedi, he was never able to fully grasp their way, and so he became a Republic agent. Satele was proud of him nonetheless, though regretful that she couldn't serve with him in the Jedi Order. This instance is definitely unique, considering that Satele would become the Grand Master. She kept her secret life buried, and continued to work with Jace, but at a long distance. Back in the Clone Wars era, we've actually got 4 more Jedi families that we want to discuss. Up next is Rannick Solisar, who attempted to have a family in secret, but was actually discovered. The council discovered his breaking of the rules. However, unlike what we've been told, he was not expelled from the Jedi Order. Instead, he was heavily reprimanded. We are told that disciplinary action was taken, but no records exist to detail what that discipline actually entailed. But we can take an educated guess. Given that we have no information on Cam's mother, it seems that Rannick was forced to renounce his relationship altogether and was forbidden from ever seeing her. However, Rannick was still able to see his son, and Cam was trained as a Jedi, albeit informally. The Jedi Rannick continued to serve in the Clone Wars, fighting even in the Battle of Geonosis, and when Order 66 was issued, Solisar managed to dodge the Purge and to get his son to safety. However, he died protecting his son from Lord Vader, and his son was taken to become an agent of the Empire. Many years later, Cam Solisar was redeemed to the light side by Luke Skywalker and would become a prominent member of the new Jedi Order. Another child of the Jedi that would be drawn to the dark side against their will was Galen Merrick, the son of Kento Merrick and Mali. These two Jedi had gotten to know each other during the Clone Wars. Kento was a young Jedi that sought lots of adventure. He saw the war as a way to prove himself. But offsetting that tendency was the Jedi Mali, who had no interest in fame or glory. Her sympathy for those suffering from the war caused Kento to rethink his views about the Jedi. They ended up developing a close relationship, and discovered that they would prefer living together rather than fighting a war that only hurt others. And so, they renounced their allegiance to the Jedi and went into a self-imposed exile, siring a son that they would name Galen. Their exile ultimately saved them from the initial wave of Order 66. But they would not be saved from the wrath of Vader. The Empire tracked the Jedi to the world of Kashyyyk. Mali perished when saving a group of Wookiees from Trandoshan slavers, tipping off the Empire to Jedi activity on the world. Vader arrived not too long after, and slew Kento. However, Vader was deeply impressed by the significant potential he sensed within their son. So he took the boy and trained him to become Starkiller. But beside these two, not every Jedi family suffered from the Purge. Quinlan Vos and his loved ones managed to escape. In both canon and legends, he went to the dark side for a little while and became Dooku's agent. In canon, his relationship was with Ventress, but in legends, he fell in love with Kaleen Hence, a double agent for the Separatists sent to spy on Vos. But eventually, they developed a deep love for one another that evolved into a marriage. The two ended up having a child named Corto Vos near the tail end of the Clone War. And once Order 66 was initiated, Vos and Hence agreed that the jungles of Kashyyyk would be the safest place to hide away their son. It is unknown what happened to the Vos family in legends, but from what we can gather, they vanished from the public eye entirely, and Corto remained safe from the Empire. The last Jedi on our list is Nija Halcyon, a Corellian Jedi Master. Nija served during the Clone Wars, but also had a secret marriage to a woman by the name of Sarah. In his secret life, he had a son by the name of Valen, but the boy would be left without his father when Nija was slain by a dark Jedi by the name of Nikos Tyrus. Sarah continued to live apart from the Jedi, but when the Purge occurred, she feared for the life of her son. But in order to hide her identity, she married Nija's friend, Rostek Horn, and would take his surname. Her son became Valen Horn, a name he went by for the rest of his life, including when he also would join Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Order. Besides Anakin, these were the Jedi who decided to have their own family lives. Again, if only Anakin knew that he was in good company. Perhaps any of these Clone Wars Jedi could have reassured him that having a family was possible, and perhaps they could have even coached him through his fears and his feelings. But secrecy pervaded throughout the Jedi Order, all afraid of what would happen if the Council ever discovered their secret. And so, these family Jedi were unable to support or help one another. Our own research yielded a surprisingly brief list, but that's only because many Jedi who broke the rules were extremely good at hiding it. We don't doubt that there are likely more that escaped our notice, so if we failed to mention one, be sure to let us know in the comments down below. Until next time, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel. May the Force be with you, and I hope you're having an amazing day.